this a pleasant surprise? Just recently, we got a very small trailer for an upcoming Bad Guys short film titled The Bad Guys, Little Lies and Alibis. This is supposed to release before DogMan in the cinemas, and I for one am very annoyed. I think it's great that Dreamworks is diving into the short film before the cinematic release market. Loved it when Pixar did it regularly, and it was something extra to look forward to with the trip to the cinema. But I'm so mad that I can't see this until April. Why do they hate me? Just why? Dreamworks, I've consistently supported you on this channel, shouted you out whenever I can, watched your very average holiday specials, and this is how you repay me? Can't help but feel this is very personal. Anyway, today I thought I'd dive into the trailer and try to puzzle out some coherent plot, which, if I actually succeed, will be a miracle, considering it goes for 30 seconds. Nothing else for it but to jump straight into it, I suppose. We start off with Wolf introducing himself to who I can only assume is a parole officer. I think it's safe to say that this short takes place after the events of the first film. They've served their time in prison, been released on good behaviour, and now have some follow-up meetings to make sure that they're settling back into society. You know, being upstanding citizens and all. I have no idea, truthfully. I've never been to prison. All I'm going off is other film and TV depictions of this type of thing. It makes sense though to me anyway. So all of this would make me think that the second film, where we see that the bad guys are struggling to settle into a crime-free domesticity, is going to follow up directly from this short film. I mean, feels pretty obvious, but still. In any case, the parole officer seems thrilled. The premise is laid out pretty quickly. Wolf acknowledges that they're late to their meeting, about 10 minutes late, and that it's a quote-unquote funny story, whilst each of them looks like they've gone through Kevin McAllister's house. I have a couple of things to note here. For one, to me, 10 minutes late doesn't seem like that big a deal. I get that it probably is if you're on parole, but overall, considering the state of them, you'd think it'd be much worse. Maybe I'm just getting triggered by this though. I'm having vivid flashbacks of having an appointment at the hairdresser, and I was 10 minutes late, and then they refused to see me. I'm not bitter about it. Not at all. It does make me think though, no matter how hectic and brutal their excuse is, they're going to get some additional community service or something, aren't they? This lady just seems like she's not going to have a bar of it. Looking at each of them now, I kind of can't believe how messed up they look. You have Snake on the left, who looks the least worse for wear. His body's tied in a knot and he seems to be ruffled up and dirty, but other than that, he's A-okay. Piranha, on the other hand, has tire marks over his entire body. He's wearing some plastic orange cap on his head and is petting a chicken for what seems to be emotional support. That fish has seen some shit. Then there's Wolf, who's covered in blue paint with his tie and suit completely shredded. Shark seems pretty scuffed and is holding onto an IV drip, so that's pretty sinister. I can't see him hooked up to it, but it feels useless to carry it around if you're not, so that's kind of severe. Finally, Tarantula definitely looks like she's been cooked by some electrical wiring gone wrong. A bad day has been had by the bad guys for sure. We then get a sequence of the characters relaying what happened to them before the meeting. So I think it's clear from my initial watch of these scenes that there's at least some way to put a chronology together, but before I do that, I'll talk about each small thing that happens. Starting off strong, we have an electrical malfunction on a magnetic crane, which drops a car on top of, presumably, their original car. To me, this blue car on top very much looks like the one that Wolf is driving in the trailer, so I guess this is going to become his new car. It's unclear because we just get his reaction to the cars smashing together, and the trailer is too fast to understand whether he's crying about the black car getting crushed, or the fact that his beat up blue car has just been dropped from a crane. I would have thought that he probably didn't acquire his original car legally, and that would have been seized by police when he was taken to jail at the end of the first film. When Foxington picks them up, she's driving a different car, but then allows him to drive it, so I don't know whether that's his car, or whether she's allowing him to drive her car because she's just being nice, or she's aware they're in a movie and it looks cooler if he drives off to finish it. So it's unclear, but either way, his car is severely damaged, and I assume that this is the partial cause of their delay to get to the appointment on time. My guess is they parked somewhere too long or illegally, and it was dumped in this compound. So they've come to get it out, only for some electrical hijacking of the crane to go wrong, and for them to destroy the car instead. A second clip shows some innocent person riding, I assume it's a Vespa, that's the only name I know of those electric scooter things, where the group crash lands on top of them. That takes some skill, and I have no idea where they came from, but the more I think about it, the more I actually can't believe that 5 people, and I realize they're animals, but figuratively, landed on one scooter whilst it was moving, and they seem to be flying through the air beforehand. I'd even be more forgiving if they'd all jumped on at the same time, but this is dumb luck. In the same scene, it seems that Wolf's hanging on to the back of the scooter for dear life. I kind of hope that the dude riding the Vespa was just so mad that he started smacking around the bad guys for their sheer audacity. It's more than likely, though, that he just fell off the scooter at this point and Wolf accidentally gets knocked off too, but you never know. You can see that he's got a black eye and some scratches on his nose, so I think it's safe to say he has gotten into a nasty fight before this. We then jump to a scene with Piranha holding onto Shark, Snake and Wolf out of a moving helicopter. Who knew that piranhas have such insane strength? I have no idea how they got here. Maybe they flew off a cliff and managed to grab hold of the helicopter, I don't know. Getting into one without committing some sort of crime, which I assume they didn't do as they're trying to be good, Seems like it's a pretty slim chance, so I think it's going to be accidental. I then venture a guess that they fell from said helicopter onto the Vespa. Hold on, I'm about to eat my words. The next clip shows the gang speeding along on the scooter. I assume they have no control over it due to their disproportionate sizes and the fact that they're all squished onto it. They smash through some barrier on the bridge, which now all of a sudden feels very similar to the end of the first movie, which I'm now questioning this city's priorities. Have they been in custody for over a year and they still haven't repaired this bridge? Is this just meant to stay broken in half forever as a monument to the massive crater beneath it? Even in a fictional world, taxpayer money is not being spent how it should be. Hang on, I just noticed there's a sign pointing in the direction of Los Angeles, so I guess this isn't meant to be just a completely random fictional land. I kind of always thought it was. Maybe I'm misremembering or have forgotten. It has been a while since I saw the film, but it's just blown my mind. You rarely ever see films like this that actually take place in the real world, so that's cool. It also gives credence to my thoughts about taxpayer abuse, so that's fun. Anyway, my point being is that they probably fly off the bridge and then grab onto the helicopter, because they have to fly off a bridge somewhere, otherwise the barriers make no sense. This means that they can't land on the Vespa from said helicopter, in my line of thinking anyway. I'm just getting more and more confused as time goes on, but if I didn't, this wouldn't be a very enjoyable video, I think. There's another clip of Piranha electrocuting Tarantula by mistake. I assume it's by mistake, but you never know. This is a scene where I assume that they're trying to hotwire a crane to get their car out of the compound. Doesn't look very compound-esque from this shot though. Looks like they're using some electrical cords from a vending machine, so I could be completely wrong here. There's a whole bunch of cords, and Tarantula doesn't seem the type that would jump the gun on something like this. She's rather tech-savvy, so now I'm really questioning Piranha's intent here. Wolf jumps over a fence and legs it, as we cut to another shot of him picking up Piranha and running towards a truck on a deserted road. I think Piranha probably got run over shortly before this, as he looks pretty out of it, and you can already see the tire marks on him. Also, how badly did they mess up getting to this appointment? Why are they so far out of the city? It's actually incredible they only end up being 10 minutes late. We then get to a funny bit where Snake completely loses all self-control as they find themselves inside a truck with free-range chickens. Seriously, who would keep chickens just unprotected like that in a truck? I can only assume that they're headed for the abattoir. Depressing, I know, but it's rare you find chickens on a road trip as it is. I presume they're just moving the products along. However, this brings into question a whole different ethical dilemma that, if I think too much about it, we're going to be here all day. But seriously, what is the difference between these regular chickens and the animals? How did anthropomorphic animals come to be? Are they just anthropomorphic and regular wolves? It's so interesting. That's probably a video for another day, though. But yes, the phrase chicken nuggies with live chickens and others looking on in various degrees of mildly amused to horror is too funny to me. Very funny scene. Especially with the jump cut to a swollen snake and a smashed truck door on a highway as they attempt to eject the eaten chickens from him. The chaos that must have taken place within the truck cannot be understated. Also, the poor chickens getting thrown off the bridge. Hopefully they don't collide with any traffic, although I suppose in the end it's good for them long term. They're no longer getting taken to the butchers, that's a definite plus. They at least have a chance. Okay, so since that's all the relevant clips, I'm now going to try to piece together some form of a timeline. I think what happens is they lose track of time initially and their car gets impounded. They go back to get it, and no one's there, so they attempt to hotwire the crane to get into their car, which is where Tarantula gets electrocuted. Due to this, they either pick up the wrong car, or they damage Wolf's crappy car that he can barely afford because he's a good citizen now. In the meantime, I think they have to get into some sort of fight because Wolf gets a black eye and a lot of them are scratched and looking slightly worse for wear. They also end up on the outskirts of the city somehow. Piranha probably tries to hitchhike, but gets mowed down by some car instead, and they run to jump into the back of the chicken truck. Snake attempts to eat the chickens, and they get him to throw them up and tie him in a knot so the chickens can't make their way further down his intestinal tract. They crash land on the Vespa, probably get beaten up by the driver before they presumably throw him to the wayside, only to lose control and fly off the bridge, catching the helicopter to stop their fall. Then it seems that some worse stuff happens as Wolf's entire suit gets shredded, he's splashed with blue paint, and Shark has an IV drip which can only mean to me they went to a hospital, or they stole one from an ambulance. They're also covered in feathers, which, whilst they have adopted one chicken as Piranha's emotional support animal, I don't think they could have molted that much to cover them all, so maybe the chickens come to attack them for round 2, or maybe it's just film effect to hone in on the crazy day. Probably the latter, but I reckon my previous idea would be more funny. Kind of like the shrimp from Shark Tale. I'm really curious as to how long this short film's actually going to go for. Maybe 10 minutes? Seems like enough time to me. I'm curious about the title though, Little Lies and Alibis. It doesn't really sound like something that you title a film about going through all these crazy antics if they were telling the truth. So do we think that the bad guys are telling the truth to this parole officer? Do you think they're going to be bending the truth so that way they can cover up the moments where they possibly broke the law for good reasons? I doubt an officer is going to be too happy if they tell her they had to stow away in the back of a truck or accidentally stole somebody's Vespa. Alibis is also pretty interesting. That would mean that they need somebody to corroborate what happened, right? Could Foxington make an appearance and cover up for them? You reckon the Vespa dude comes in to support them, says they really did crash into him by accident? Maybe the chicken develops the ability to speak and vouches for what truly happened. And I realize alibis aren't necessarily a negative thing. They're just people that can prove that you were doing what you said you were doing, but accompanying that with little lies means that they're probably not being truthful in their stories. It would be funny if they come up with this crazy narrative, committing with the shredded suit and all that because they slept in or something. Or the truth is too embarrassing to share, and they come up with this other crazy story instead. Either way, the trailer did a very good job of giving quite a lot of info within 30 seconds, whilst also not giving everything away. It's clear that there's a lot of plot yet to be uncovered, and that's a great thing. It's a pity I won't be able to see it with the rest of the world. Damn you, Dreamworks! Damn you, Universal! They'll probably upload the entire thing to YouTube a month later, so I won't even get to experience for the first time in the cinemas like everybody else. I'm very excited for it though. I hope it's as good as I think it's going to be. It's gotten me even more hyped for the second film, and I'm probably going to give the first one a rewatch soon. But with all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of the upcoming Bad Guys short film? Are you excited for it? Maybe not? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.